Hey, everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of Eggs. This week we have special guest Kerri Murphy. Kerri is the CEO and founder of Inspired Living, where Kerri and her team help entrepreneurs become go to experts in their fields and build influential brands. The experience she offers to her clients includes on camera training, business strategy, media, and marketing planning. Kerri is an international speaker, media expert, and successful business mentor. She's Since founding Inspired Living, Kerri has worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs, helping them become industry influencers themselves. So, without any further ado, allow us to welcome to the show our special guest, Kerri Murphy.
Yay!
Hi, Keri. Thanks for making time for us.
Of course. Thanks for having me, fellas.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit before the show. I believe Kerri was one of the poor victims of the Princess of Norway visit that we've referred to a couple times. And so we've had to rebook her. So we're grateful to have her here and glad to have her on the show.
I'll be booted for royalty. Maybe, even though I do have my own tiara. So,
there you go.
Yeah. Whole other story.
Well, cool. Well, speaking of stories, and let's talk a little bit about who you are and where you come from. What do you do?
Well, as you mentioned, I help entrepreneurs create influential brands. But at the end of the day, what I really do is give people permission to be who they are. I teach them how to be authentic. I teach them how to use video to really capture and captivate their audience so they can't wait to work with them. And so I love it. I grew up on camera. I started at the perfect age, which was the most awkward age, 11. Oh my God, do we remember 11? I mean, it's just adolescence gone crazy. But I found this passion and this affinity for entertainment and what we can do through a screen. And it also allowed me to escape and to fantasize and to, I've done a lot of commercial work and film work, and that led to hosting. But the funny thing is that it actually also led to entrepreneurship. My first business was interior design in my 20s. And then I purchased the talent agency I went through as a little girl at 27.
So
Yep.
at 11, you went through a talent agency to get these gigs, and then you ended up buying the company that you started working at 11?
Yes.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
How funny.
It's a pretty cool story. And I also went back and worked for the agency out of college for a couple of years before I decided to start my own business. So it was just so serendipitous how it all worked out. And it was divine because it's what I do now is such a perfect culmination of everything I've ever done. I love creating beautiful things. I help people create brands that are visually exciting and actually strategically useful, to teach them how to be on camera, to help someone really develop their gift and their talent. And so it's just been amazing. So I had that at 27, built it for 5 years. And then we had this wonderful thing called the recession hit, which I'm sure I'm not the only guest to talk about that.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
And it was devastating. I lost everything. And but at the time, it also allowed me to, kind of rebirth my childhood passion of being a full-time host. I moved out to LA, signed with the top agency, and Inspired Living was born after I decided I do not want to audition for one more thing anymore. Ever again. I don't want to audition. And so it was that aha moment that I was like, okay, I know I'm good at this. I was booking some really great shows, but I also felt like it was just so challenging waiting for someone to validate my gift, like what I really wanted to do in the world. So I remember reaching out to Kevin Sorbo, who was a Facebook friend. I hosted a show on the Golf Channel. So I got all these golfers as Facebook friends. And I said, hey, I'd love to interview you. And he said, sure. And that was the beginning of Inspired Living. And it has grown so much since then. But that is the long and short of it.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, I mean, you wouldn't know it because we look like such naturals on camera here, but we actually kind of don't like it. So it'd be interesting to hear, to get some pointers on how we could be improving this, because I mean, we just added video to this podcast maybe in the last 6 months or so. And so it's been kind of a new experience for us. And both Mike and I here have faces for radio, so we're perfect for being behind the scenes. But getting out here in front is a little bit.
I think you're being modest
for us. Well,
yes.
I'm trying to be self-deprecating.
Well, you said to be yourself, right? Now you got the 5 o'clock shadow going on. That's myself.
That's
right. Perfect.
Well, I don't feel bad because I'm so hot.
I know.
So anyway, let's talk a little bit about that then. So early in your career, I guess you began, looking for acting roles, talent roles. What was that like as a kid? And I guess, I mean, I have 2 young boys, and one of them I think probably could go down the track you did, where he would have interest in being out in front of the camera for the world to see. And what was that like as an experience? Like, I mean, I just can't relate. I was such an introvert at that age. I just wanted to sit inside my little shell and be left alone.
Yeah. What was your first gig?
What was my first gig?
Yeah.
I think it was actually mannequin modeling. Remember? In the doorway, like for hours. And no, it was like a JCPenney fashion show too. I remember doing that. I was so excited to be on a runway. So I started off with modeling and doing some print work, and then that parlayed into the acting. I grew up with a supermodel looking grandmother. She was short, but she looked like Marilyn Monroe. She was stunning. And so I grew up in the 80s. I wanted to be a supermodel, and then realized my hips were 10 times the size of a supermodel. The Italian curves I definitely got from my mom's side.
I've been told
Anyway,
about my hips too.
right, it's tough. But to answer your question, it was actually very difficult, because if you look at me now, right, you probably don't know what ethnicity I am. And now that's amazing, because we're in such a melting pot of cultures and ethnicities. But growing up in the 80s, you had to be dark, light, or medium, and there was nothing in the middle, and that's how you got booked. And so I remember when I moved out to LA, my last print job was for Chase Bank, and it was ethnically ambiguous. So, so it was a bit of a challenge. And then, I was told throughout my pretty much whole life is, Keri, if you could just lose 10 pounds, you would be so much more successful. And as a woman, I'm sure this is difficult for you to relate to as men, because you don't feel the pressure as much as we do. But I don't care what industry you're in. And that's why I love helping people show up on camera. We constantly feel like we're not good enough. I don't care what you look like. I don't care if you're a supermodel, you're a dad, you're a business owner, you're an astronaut. It doesn't matter. There is that ego and that critic in all of us that says, who are you to be seen? And so I love combating that.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, that is part of, I mean, I'm joking about the camera, of course, but I mean, the reason I don't want to be in front of it is because I do have these body issues too. I've always struggled with my weight, and, never been able to keep it where I want to keep it. And unfortunately that makes me insecure to be on camera. So I do it because we need to do it, but I don't love to do it,
Yeah. Ryan was a driving factor for the cameras, and I would still be just doing radio if I could.
Yeah. But you know what? People get this also multi-sensory experience that you've added to your podcast, which, people love to listen, people love to watch, and people love you for you. And I know that sounds so cheesy and cliche, but Ryan, like, I so appreciate you being so transparent. And I think so many people listening can relate. But at the end of the day, people want real people. Like, I always say people do not connect with perfection. We might admire it. We might want to know, oh, what are they doing? And there are obviously brands and people out there that really kind of raise that bar. But at the end of the day, no one relates to those people. They won't choose to do business with those people. And so that's what I'm always teaching my clients is, please don't try to be anything that you're not. If Oprah was, told she didn't have a face for TV and listened, she would not be the influencer she is today, right? And there's so many of those stories that we hear.
Yeah, I think that's true. And so maybe that's a good place to sort of step into one of these categories we could get into a little bit with you, which is personal development and brand development, sort of developing the confidence it might take to put yourself out in front of an audience and why you might want to do it. Maybe can we discuss that topic a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, why you want to do it is 8 out of 10 views online or video. It is video nation. And, growing up, as I said earlier, I had to audition to be on camera. We did not have the platforms and the resources that we are so fortunate as business owners to have today. And so it is vital. I mean, you will get lost if you do not start putting your mug out there. So you need to use video. But it is, like you said too, the mindset is just as important as anything else, your message, your video equipment, anything else that you're using. And so we really work with that. And I think the key to that is knowing what you're really great at and why your message matters. Why are you using video? Yes, I know you know now that you need to. And by the way, research shows people are 67% more likely to buy a product or service after watching a video. It's commercials, right? We've been doing them for years. But I think the issue we're having right now, I always say people are throwing up on camera. They have no idea why they're on it, what they're saying. Like, it's just such a hot mess. And so for me to teach at this time is very interesting because there's so much out there. There's over 4 billion views on YouTube every day. So, you're using video, you know how important it is. But if you're not confident in what you're doing, why you're doing it, and who you're talking to, you are going to get lost. And that is where we come in.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. I mean, I think I heard a study, and I might be screwing this up, but I think I heard like 25,000 minutes of video per minute on YouTube or something
Yes, yes.
being created. And I mean,
Yep.
it's just an incredible amount of content. And like you said, there's so many people who are just kind of, throwing up or just capturing
Right.
right to the camera.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in plenty of cases, literally throwing up. Like, I mean, that's, I mean, it could just be anything.
Yep.
People are, not real, picky about what they're throwing
Yeah.
out.
Not enough discretion.
Yeah. And so I think that's really important. But I also think that developing that strategy on the back is, the core differentiator here is understanding the why behind why you're doing stuff.
Yes.
And
And
so
that's what we lead with.
So in your, I guess, knowing this about you and knowing that that's how you feel about it, what do you think is the, I guess, number one? Sorry, we're getting like some weird feedback here for a second. What do you think like if you're making video, do you think it's better to like shoot it out in volume, like get lots of content out, or is it better to be more selective, take your time and produce pieces? So to that idea.
Such a good question. And I think it's both. I think there are times you do need to just grab your phone and get on Facebook Live, do an Instagram story. People want to know what goes on behind the scenes in anyone's life. That's why reality is as big as it is today. That's why we are enamored with The Bachelor and the Kardashians. By the way, none of that is real. I hate to burst any bubbles right now. None of that is real. But I do think that, the more authentic and off the cuff you can be, I call those personality videos. There's actually 5 videos we teach. And those are personality. And that's what drives your brand. Personality videos drive your brand. They're off the cuff. They're authentic. They're impromptu. But then you need to curate professional content for your blog posts, your sales pages, your opt-in pages. There's a level of positioning and authority that comes when you actually produce curated content that looks good, sounds good, right? You stand out because not everyone is doing that or has the means to do that. So we really help our clients differentiate between when you just want to pick up your phone and start blabbing and when you actually want to do storyboards and actually create, curated content and how to do that.
Okay.
The last time I podcasted with my phone, I pulled it out as a security measure because I thought I was going to get mugged.
Problematic. Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, so the idea isn't necessarily either or, not just one type of content or the other, but it is more about this mix. It's when you choose to do what you do. And so I guess the point I'm trying to make or trying to understand is that there's, the people who are just on Facebook or just on LinkedIn doing or Instagram or wherever doing these live streams, that kind of stuff, like maybe that content doesn't take away as much as long as there's curated content out there as well. Like
Yes.
it's sort of okay to put it in both places as long as you have, I guess, sort of it back to that.
Well,
idea
I
of a
think
why.
it could be a double-edged sword. You could have like really nice, well-curated content, and then you go and do your thing on your phone that's half-assed and just sounds like crap. People could, see the inner workings and not actually, you know what I mean? Like you could do yourself a detriment if you just kind of spew crap for no reason.
Yeah, and we teach a format that allows our clients to instantly put their thoughts into a framework that scientifically connects with how people think. And I think that is the key, is always starting with the why. So even when I pick up my phone and I start talking and it's something personal, maybe I'm sharing about my daughter or I'm sharing about a trip I'm taking or I'm having a bad day, whatever it is. I'm always focused on why the person watching cares. Like, it's like, great, this is Kerri's life, but how does it apply to my life? And I think at the end of the day, we just need to keep that in mind always is what I'm doing on the fly, supporting what I'm doing on the highly produced, curated side too, and how do they partner and support one another?
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. I mean, basically, the target or the thing at the end of the road is your consumer. So who is it you're producing curated content for? Same
Right.
for non-curated content. I mean, you have to understand your audience and be empathetic to those people.
Yeah.
So I think that makes a lot of sense. So can somebody, with no experience become authentic and confident behind the camera? I mean, we've been doing this for a while now, and I still don't feel that good about it.
Oh, come to me, fellas. Come to me. Give me 2 days. Absolutely. I mean, I have worked with people that literally, when they think of being on camera, they want to throw up. Their knees shake. like there's major breakdowns. And then I've worked with people that have a stellar speaking career for over 20 years, but when they get on camera, right, the energy is very different speaking through a camera lens than it is speaking in front of a huge or small audience. The energy is very different. So I call that the it factor, right? Growing up in entertainment, it's that it quality. We all have it. Most of us just need to develop it, and we have never been told how. We don't have the confidence. And that's like I have a 2-day signature on camera training that people fly in and work with me for 2 days. And that the results are transformative. And it's just mindset. It's mindset and then structure. Man, those two things, right? In all of our lives, mindset and structure creates very different outcomes.
Yeah, it sort of feels like that's the sort of the special sauce in everything, regardless of.
Yes.
So yeah, that makes perfect sense. So to the idea, we've talked a little bit about the curated content versus just sort of off the cuff. And we sort of have appreciated everybody's authenticity and transparency today. But can we talk a little bit about, sharing versus oversharing versus what to put on versus what not to put on? Like, I mean, I don't know if you have any hard and fast rules about that, but, obviously discretion is a piece of it. But can you maybe speak a little bit to that?
I heard
Sure.
dark is slimming, so I go that route.
I am wearing black today. It's so funny because it's a conversation I actually have with our clients all the time. And I say, there's authenticity and there's transparency. Authenticity is how you say something. It's how you show up. Transparency is how much you share. So I tell my clients, it is up to you to decide how transparent you want to be. But like we were talking about earlier, it has to make sense. And we've often heard, the message is in the mess. And I feel like sometimes, guys, like people are so stuck in their mess that they shouldn't be sharing the message yet. Like they're too in it. And it feels icky. It almost feels like we're watching something like we shouldn't be watching at the moment, and yes, it's engaging because we're curious creatures, right? But how is that helping your brand? Because again, I work with business owners. So we have to be a little careful of when we put things out there. And again, I always tell them to ask themselves, what is the purpose of me sharing this right now? How is it helping someone else? So it's a fine line. I think everyone kind of has their own barometer on how much they feel comfortable sharing and how much they don't. One of my clients is a very super successful sales strategist. She has closed billions of dollars in sales, and her husband has early onset Alzheimer's. And for her to share that, it allows her to show a side of herself that people never see. And she goes from this badass boss CEO to someone who is really just approachable and real. And I think that is a beautiful thing. When you can show, yes, I am strong and I have all this going for me, but I am a real person and I'm struggling with something over here. Again, people don't relate to perfection. So if all they see is this perfectly curated looking content, they might admire it, but they won't relate to it. And so that's where I like to play with the balance of when does it make sense to share an outside story or to be extremely transparent and vulnerable. I do think it's very important, but it's just looking at the context and the why behind it.
Yeah. Your example made me think of something. So in our business, in our agency or marketing company, one of the things we've been trying to sell because it's in our wheelhouse is podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have been talking to a company about doing podcasting for their company as a, modality to become established as an expert or whatever in the field. And but their big concern is they're already a pretty large company. They're moving $2-3 billion a year in sales, and they're doing amazing work. But their concern is by going out and being transparent and sort of talking about a little bit of, the things they're learning and stuff like that, just, I guess, not knowing everything, they're supposed to be experts.
Get out of here. Yeah.
And, right. And but they're kind of having this internal struggle, like in terms of positioning or how they frame their company.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to, become actually less of an expert or become less, by, I guess, lifting the veil and showing people what they don't know? Is that actually going to cause more harm to their company than just sort of pretending that they know it all?
Mm-hmm. Well, no one knows it all, right? And I think that most brands, when there's a relatability factor, when you hear Richard Branson talk about his experience and his failures, you admire him more. Like you're like, wow, he's gone through all that and is still this business mogul today. And again, it has to make sense with what the business and the brand is representing. So for example, if you're creating this widget and you're telling me how you just recalled 1 million of them because they're horrible and they don't work, and that was a tough lesson, I probably wouldn't share that, right? But I would share about the struggles you had with finding the right widget and what you had to create and all the failures it took to get to the right one. Does that make sense? So I think I would have to know more about the business,
Sure.
but I think that if there is a level of transparency and vulnerability, people fight with you, people champion you, people buy your product because of what you've overcome or the lessons you've learned, or they just like you, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we make buying decisions off of brands and companies we like, we relate to. And I think that relatability factor is really important, but it has to make sense to the consumer.
Yeah, 100%. I think that lots of times when you just come out and tell the client, yeah, I don't have the answer for that right now, but give me a day and I'll do the research and get back to you.
And then you actually get back to them, right? Yeah.
That's the key, is following up and actually getting back. But
Yeah.
they appreciate it more when you're honest with them. Say, hey, I don't really know right now, but let me get back to you with an exact answer. So,
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm like, that is a really good question. Let me find that out for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess, you don't want to be that poser who pretends to know everything and then spews bad advice. So I think
There's enough of those people all over right now. And I call that selling the map, right? It's like, hey, take my webinar and in 6 minutes, I'll teach you how to make 6 figures. It's like, that's not possible. And, when people are like taking a course and then regurgitating it and selling it, they are literally just selling a map. Like, hey, I took this 4-step course. Now I'm going to teach you. But since I haven't been through it myself, I don't know how to get you through any obstacles. I don't know how to get you over the slump. I don't know how to overcome fear and mindset and struggles around it. So there's so much of that. And I think, again, when you say, that's a great question, I don't know that answer, let me find out for you and get back to you, people really admire that. And then, like you said, the follow-up is key there. But I don't think anyone expects anyone to know everything. So
yeah, I think that's probably true. So I've got this question that somebody gave me to ask you, and I don't have any other context, so I'm not sure if this is a good spot to slip it in.
Okay, go ahead.
left field, here we go.
Yeah, what are the 4 Ds?
The 4 Ds. Okay, so when someone is struggling with what they want to do in their life, this is kind of one of my personal development talks. And I say the very first thing you need to do is decide. The way our brain works, I'm so fascinated. If you studied quantum physics and really understand the power of the mind, it's fascinating stuff. And so we hear what you think about, you bring about. So what are you deciding that you want in your life? And why you want it, and get really specific. When you look at all the work that Tony Robbins does and all these other personal development gurus, it is that I am statement, it's the vision board, it's getting super clear on your why, all of that stuff. So you have to decide what you want. That's the easy part. I always tell people, have you ever decided you want to go on a diet? That's the easy part, right? The next part is the more difficult part, which is the dedicate. Like, how dedicated are you to that outcome? Because whether you're an entrepreneur or you're going through, a relationship hurdle, whatever it is, being dedicated to the outcome is so important. When we look at all the celebrity successes and all the interviews I've done with people, it always comes down to belief and dedication. That's it. There's no secret sauce. It's those 2 things. So it really is decide, dedicate. And then once you have done those 2 things, it is develop. We are constant vessels, right, of mind, memory, matter. How are you developing yourself like an athlete? Like, how are you training yourself? How are you training your mind? How are you building out your team? Like, what do you need to develop in order to step into what you've already decided that you want to become? And then lastly, it's how are you delivering that to the world? Whether it's a business model or it's a message or whatever that modality may be, how are you presenting that and putting it out there? How are you showing up? My tagline's dream it, live it, be it. So who are you being that is congruent with what it is that you want? Because a lot of people want things, guys. A lot of people want success. They want more money. They want happiness. They don't believe it can happen. They're not developing themselves or their mindset to actually attract those things into their life. So decide, dedicate, develop, and deliver.
Oh, I love that. That's so awesome. And I think it's, a nice process for people to try and follow, and really something people can act on. So
And
I
it's
love
easy.
the
It's
concept.
easy. It's like, take each thing that you want to do, decide what it is, dedicate yourself, ask yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, because I don't care what you're doing. Like, if you're not really dedicated to something, it is really easy to just say squirrel, like, like
I'm
bright,
notorious
shiny
for
object. Yeah.
that. That's awesome. Well, so let's talk a little bit. This is something that sort of intrigued me too. You touched on it really quickly as we transition, or as you sort of gave a little introduction, but you talked about having started completely over in your 30s. So going from, I guess, sort of a modeling and acting career into entrepreneurship. Can you talk about that a little bit? And if you don't mind, not by design, but by happenstance, we haven't had that many female leaders on this show. Like we've
Mm.
had a few, but just kind of that's how it works out. And so I wondered if you can kind of keep it a little bit in the perspective of being a female CEO, the challenges you've had to overcome, things like that, if there are any. I mean, maybe it went very well for you, but I'd be interested in hearing sort of the differences, or your experience in this.
Sure. Well, okay. So I grew up always wanting to be on camera, and then I started my first business in my 20s. And at that time, I was still pursuing the on camera stuff on the side. And I was still leveraging video. I didn't even know at the time, when I had my interior design business, that I was the local interior design expert on our morning show. I was doing commercials. And then I purchased the talent agency that I went through. And so for 5 years, I represented over 500 talent, from babies to adults, in print, commercial, film. I managed a lot of talent. And at the same time, I was pursuing the on-camera stuff on the side. I never invested in mentorship. I never invested in personal development. It was like, I can do it. I got this. I don't need any help, right? I'm going full force. And what I always say to people is that your passion gets you so far on the success spectrum. Because if you love something and people feel that, and then you're actually good at something, you will be successful. You will reach a certain level of success. But then if anything catastrophic happens, like a recession, and you haven't supported yourself with mentor support and team, you have no choice but to crumble. And that could be anything. That could be someone sues you. It could be an employment dispute. It could be anything, because you have not set yourself up with the tools that you really need to build a business. You have built a job, right? So when I lost everything in the recession, I literally got a U-Haul, sent a notice out to all my talent, all my vendors. And it was devastating, because I was my agency. There was no separation between Kerri Murphy and Murphy Talent Group. It was my whole existence at that time. And I felt like I let everyone down. There was so much guilt involved. How did I let this happen? But I will say I'm a woman of faith. And so I did believe that it wasn't the end of my world. I'm a good person. The recession, I didn't even know it was happening. So when I moved out to LA, no family, no job. I mean, seriously, just doing the hustle. And in LA, pursuing on camera work at 33, you might as well be 90, right? Like I'm competing with people that are just, so much younger and thinner and taller and whatever. So for me, guys, I think that from a CEO perspective, looking back, I would not change a thing, because what I'm doing now really is my best and highest use. And I remember when I finally did reach out for mentorship, like in the last 6 months of the agency dying at slow death, one of my mentors said, "Keri, you have never been working at your best and highest use." And for me, putting my love of being on camera and doing that genius work that I can do on the side for so long, even though I was great at running the agency, but that's all I sat in an office for 14 hours a day and was not really doing what I'm most gifted at. So as a CEO and a business owner now, and I've had Inspired Living now for 8 years, and I still love it. I usually have about a 5-year cycle, and I'm still loving it. We're still growing and thriving. It's constantly asking myself that question. It's am I doing what I love? Am I doing 80% of the time? Am I working at my best and highest use? And then here's been the biggest lesson. It's hiring and investing in team and mentorship. I invest a lot in personal growth. I am involved in a group of women that are all 7- and 8-figure business owners. We collaborate, we mastermind, we ask each other for advice. I'm the first to say, I do not know. Can you please, I need help. I need resources. I would not do that in my 20s, because I just wanted to prove that I could do it. Does that make sense? So,
Yeah.
So from this perspective now in my 40s, I'm a very different business owner. I'm very clear with who I want to serve, why I want to serve them, what I'm really good at. And then I've built an incredible team and do a lot of investing in myself, because it's that decide and then develop. I'm continually developing myself to even be a greater CEO. I would love to see Inspired Living as a global lifestyle brand and business, model that reaches hundreds of thousands of people across the world. So who do I need to become in order to lead that charge?
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's really insightful. I think for a lot of people who don't know where they're going or what they're doing, I think this concept of doing your one true thing, or the thing that you can be doing your best at, is really important to identify. I mean, even in my own career, I for a long time couldn't have been separated from my business, and we're just barely baby stepping into this concept
Yeah.
of reformatting the company and redesigning the business to leave me out of the center a little bit more, just because I've always been the guy. People
Yep.
hire our firm to work with me, not to work with our firm. And so now we're trying to change that image a little bit as we bring on new clients and things like that. But it's been a transition, and trying to understand that. And I'm finding, exactly as you described, my background is in art direction, creative direction, and design. And I found that now it's a little arduous to sit behind a computer and do graphic design when I could be out meeting new people and building relationships with new people.
Right.
And
And that really is your role, right? And that's my role. And so I'm with you. Like, I was getting to a place probably about 6 months ago that I was starting to get resentful. Like, I'm sitting behind my computer, micromanaging, like trying to, like, we have to get a blog post out. How challenging can that be? And now just letting go and just trusting my team and really focusing on, Kerri, what is that thing that you do that no one else can do like you? And where can you also bring in other coaches? I don't have to run every training. I can have other people come in and do them. And they're amazing. They're just as good as I am. So I'm with you. It's like then that's just business maturity, right? Taking yourself out of the middle and really creating a circle of support and vision for people to relate to.
Well, it's also a matter of getting the key team in place too that makes a difference.
Yeah.
I've had issues in the past where I send people out to represent me and they don't do a good job of it. And
Yes.
sometimes that's more detrimental than actually just doing it yourself.
Yep.
And once you have that good team in place and you know that you can rely on them and you know that, they're going to represent the business in a good light, uh, you can't beat that.
Right.
It's the
It's
best.
invaluable.
Yep.
Yeah, but you're right. Finding the right people. I mean, you talk to anyone, and team is the toughest part of running and scaling a business. So, I've been fortunate to have amazing team members, and I've been fortunate to not have such amazing team members, because I learn every time. What am I looking for? What's the right mix for us? Who is the right type of support and mindset around what we do too? So.
Well, yeah, and I think you landed on an interesting point, or an interesting idea there, something, and we've talked to a number of guests recently about this, but it's that idea of business maturity.
Mhm.
You don't know what you don't know until you know it.
Yeah.
And that just kind of requires time. There is no quick fix. In fact, we did an interview earlier today with a guy who was talking about his, 12-year overnight success.
Right.
And it's that same idea, right? It's I think it's really prevalent because of social media and things like that, that you see the guy with his yacht or whatever, and you don't know that it took him 25 years of building a business to buy that yacht.
Right. Or it's not his. He's renting it for a photo shoot.
Or he's standing in
Right.
front of some guy's yacht, or I mean, you have no idea what it is, right? But I think
Yes.
it builds this perception of, for especially a lot of young entrepreneurs, that it's like, well, why don't I have that? Why can't I have that?
Yeah.
And they're not even thinking about putting in the work to get it. Just how come
Yeah.
I don't have it? And so I think that idea of maturity in business and understanding what you need, I always say, I mean, it's the only way, because I'm 38. And so the only way I've sort of managed, in the social media world, to not beat myself up too much about not being where I'd like to be financially and everything else, is I say that it's taken every step or every choice I've ever made to get to where I am today.
Yes.
There was no faster route to this. There was no quicker way to go. It's not that I missed some boat early on. It actually took 38 years of decision making to arrive here, and it might take 48 years to get to where I want to be. But it's, there's no shortcut. There's no quicker
Yeah.
way to get there.
What a beautiful frame for that, though, because you're absolutely right. I think we can punish ourselves for not being somewhere fast enough. I hear that so much with my clients. Like, I thought I'd be so much further along, but I'm like, but look at the person you've become. you wouldn't have been even to build this like 6 months ago. And
Well, and
so,
that's the thing, every time you see one of these 26-year-old trust fund kids in front of their rented Lamborghini,
right.
you kind of go, oh, well, God, I mean, he's 26. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
38 and I haven't even driven a Lamborghini.
Right.
What's going on? And so it is pretty easy to fall into that trap of kind of beating yourself up over these things. And so I
Yeah.
actually had to kind of create that framework for me to live within to keep me from being hyper depressed every time I saw something
And you also look at those images, and yes, I mean, we all have those images, those, in front of the camera images. I always say, we have in front of the camera and behind the scenes, and we put out, our in front of the camera images. But, we don't know what that guy who's 26, who has the Lamborghini, if he's happy, might be miserable, might be suffering from severe depression, might have anxiety, might, feel like he has no friends, and the friends he does have only wants him for his money. Like, you don't know. I've met a lot of rich people that are very unhappy, and a lot of people that have modest lifestyles that are so full of joy. And so to me, that really is like, when you can make money and be happy, that's awesome. And that is my goal for all of our clients. But, I think each and every one of us has to take ownership for what success really is. And it's not always, the luxury yacht lifestyle, as much as I love that, that doesn't have to qualify to your value.
Well,
Sure.
for me, it comes down to flexibility and easy
Mm,
schedule. Like being
no
self-employed
doubt about it.
for me is it's like I took 3 days and did landscaping the last 3 days.
Yeah.
The ability to do that and not have to report to, the boss saying, "Hey, you got to be here at 9."
Yeah.
That to me is the reward, even though, I might have struggled a little bit financially over the years just because I chose that route.
Yeah.
You know?
And there's something so amazing about that, right? To say, you know what, I am responsible for me, and I get to choose how I spend my time. I have a daughter who's about to be 4, and, I can go to her school things. I can pick her up. I can take her. To have that flexibility. Like, what value can you put on that?
Yeah, it's true.
You know?
So to circle back around, we started going down the path of sort of, female problems in business and becoming a CEO as a woman and what that, is like. One of the things I saw here in your notes too is that as you were growing your business exponentially over the last few years, you did so while being a single mom.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's, difficult to sort of wrap your head around. I mean, I'm married and we have 2 boys, and I know how hard it is, like as a married person with kids. Like I couldn't even imagine. My mother was a single mom, and it was just me and my mom growing up. And I know how much time she spent in, and she's a school teacher. She didn't go the entrepreneurial route, but it's still, she put herself through college and everything while I was growing
Oh, good
up.
for her. Yeah.
And she did a ton, and she's finally retiring this year. Good for her. And
Yay.
but it took, it was a lot of work, dealing with me, and I was a pretty easy kid. I was like a
Can you
bag of
imagine
old
if it was
rags,
me?
I mean,
Yeah.
it's easy. But still, just to be that single parent. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about just sort of went into developing your business, building your business with that as a challenge.
Well, it's funny. It's actually, I consider it the greatest blessing in my life. She was a bit of a surprise, and I had a choice, of how am I going to show up for her? And, I decided to move away from my family in Oregon. So I'm in California by myself running this business. And I remember I was about 7 months pregnant, 8 months pregnant. And even though I had team, I didn't have anyone like running my operations on a regular basis. And I'm like, all right, I'm about ready to pop out a kid, and I'm going to need some help here. So I'm like, all right, got to hire someone. So I hired who is now my business manager today. She's phenomenal. And it was really, it goes back to team, I got to say, and being really clear with time and priorities, but also, I mean, I'm with a significant other now. He's amazing. And he says all the time, Keri, I don't know how you did it. And when I look back, like, I don't know how I did it either. I feel like women are pretty resilient, and, we learn to just adapt. And I wish I could say like I had some magic secret sauce or fairy dust. But I will say it was the joyous time. The last 3.5 years, my business has grown exponentially. We've doubled our team. We have 10 coaches on my team. We're reaching thousands of people. Like, it's amazing. And I have a great little girl, and I just did. I had a nanny. I will say I had a nanny. I had resources to get help when I needed it. And so I was very thankful for that. There's no way on God's green earth I could have done this without some sort of help. But it was not being afraid to help. And, I had my breakdowns. I had my cry out moments. I had my, why me? And then I am I am inspired. Like I that is who I am at my core. Like I love inspiring people and I have a pretty positive outlook on life. So I would just pick myself up and be like, all right, let's keep going. And I think my community though, and my clients really help me with that, because you talk to people, you hear results, you know, you're making an impact on people's lives. And for me, that's important to know that I'm having some impact on people's lives. So
Yeah. Well, and I think that, you know, back to that concept of team or whatever, whether it's a paid team or it's family or it's friends or
yeah,
whatever your support group is,
yeah.
you know, whoever that is that can help give you the support in those hard times, you know, is obviously very key. Also, I think you raised an interesting point. You know, there are different personality types and stuff, and there are people, you know, like you said that, you know, when it was clear you were going to be a mother and there was no going back on this thing, like you sort of were able to rise to the occasion. You know, how am I going to be there for her? And I think that there are people who sort of go both ways. You know, there's folks who are defeated by that prospect.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are folks that sort of thrive in that kind of environment. You know, I mean, for me, having a deadline or some hard, you know, date that I've got to work towards, or, you know, we've got a talk coming up on this day and we've got to be prepared for it.
Well,
like that forces me to get stuff done, you know, that I
Sure.
might otherwise do.
it's like it's like the accountability. You know, now you have your kid relying on you. You have to perform. If you don't perform, they starve.
We're in big trouble. You know, I have to say what else happened though is like, I was introduced to kind of a spiritual healer, which sounds a little woo-woo, but stick with me. So I didn't even know.
Oh man, here we
Wait,
go.
I know. Here we go. I didn't even know I was pregnant at the time. I was introduced to her through a mutual friend, and I had a session with her, and I was so blown away by her assessment and whatever she was saying that I signed up to work with her. And through Sabrina, I learned to meditate. I learned to breathe. I learned, as cliche as it sounds, like everything was happening for me, and how to really look at this opportunity as one of expansion and opportunity and the blessing it was. If it probably wasn't for her, I don't know if I would have been as peaceful as I was. I really, like, throughout my pregnancy and even being a single mom, I had her there, and learning to meditate, learning to breathe, knowing that everything's happening for me, that this is all part of my greater expansion on the planet and what I'm supposed to do. I never was like, woe is me. What am I going to do? How am I going to handle it? That was never a thought in my mind.
Yeah.
It was like, this is what I've been handed, and this is all part of my evolution and what I'm putting out there. And so having that peace of mind, I have to say, was so comforting, because never once was I resentful or stressed. There's just a peace about it. And I think when you have peace about your life, like everything that you need shows up, and it has. So
yeah, no, I think that's a good point too. I mean, you know, there's so much, like, you know, jargon or vernacular in the press these days about work-life balance and
yeah,
healthcare and blah, blah, blah. You know, there's like a million of these things. But I think that there's at least something to it, you know, that little nugget there of being able to sort of manage your stress or manage your emotions and, you know, feel certain ways. I think having the power to do that is, you know, obviously a great mechanism to help cope with copious amounts of stress, you know,
yes,
impending motherhood, business starting over, all these different things.
yeah,
You know, I mean, I can only imagine, you know, I mean, I'm at least in the same boat that if I don't work, my kids starve. I'm lucky my partner works and she, you know, has a great job and makes decent money. So we won't crash and burn too hard if I lose my gig. But yeah, I mean, being able to work for myself, you know, the pressure is on me to produce. And so
right,
if I'm not generating income, you know, we get into trouble. So
yeah.
being able to manage stress and everything is good. And luckily, like I said, I mean, I'm sort of like living with an old cat, so I'm pretty good about not getting my pulse too high at any given.
The changes litter every week.
Yeah, as long as I'm golden. So let's go back a little bit to some of the video stuff, just since that's sort of the bread and butter at Inspired Living.
Yes.
Let's talk about the 5 different kinds of videos. We talked about a couple of these early on, but let's sort of get into a little more depth on that.
Sure. So, you know, we were talking earlier about, you know, what type of videos are just impromptu and which are more produced and curated. So the video that we shoot with our clients at that 2-day training I was telling you about is the positioning video. And that is the first type of video.
Is that with the camera above you to get the better lines? Is it
No,
like
but that is a trick though. That is a trick. Always have the camera above you. Good. We were actually taking family photos last night, and the lady who was taking it was like way down. I'm like, can you please?
no, lift it up.
No, but
no, I will say in our defense, because you're seeing an awful lot of nostril right now. That's because we've got a monitor here to the right, so we can see you while you speak. So we're both looking up like a couple, sycophants looking
Yeah.
at and so our cameras are high enough, but our noses are higher than they're supposed to be.
Yes, you,
So,
you actually don't look like I'm looking down on you, so that's good.
Mhm.
So positioning is that video within the first 90 seconds of coming to your website. I know why I'm there, why you, what you do, how you do it, and the next step I need to take.
Do you help produce that content too?
Yes.
Sorry to
Yep.
cut you off.
We do all of that. Yeah. And that's our 2-day It Factor training. So
Okay.
people come to us, you spend all this money on a website and the average bounce rate on a site is 3 to 5 seconds. So how do you get someone to stay there and to know instantly that they're in the right place? I often say your website is like your home online. You've built this beautiful home, but when people come knocking at the door, which room do they go in? They have no idea if they're in the right place. So this video tells them in a very short amount of time, because that's all you have, quickly why they're there, and it's positioning, because you're positioning yourself as an authority. You're positioning yourself as an answer to their burning question or the remedy to their pain, right? So you're positioning yourself and quickly telling them why you. So that's positioning. We talked about personality videos. Those drive your brand. Those are the behind the scenes. Hey guys, I'm here at my shoot with the celebrity. I'm about to sit down. I'm really nervous, but I'm excited. Tell me your questions, those sort of things, right? Behind the scenes. And then we have what I call product videos. Most people I work with are not leveraged. And what I mean by that is they're still trading time for dollars, but they have an incredible expertise. So we help them create online products, courses, masterclasses, webinars that leverage their knowledge, which the knowledge business is booming. People want instant answers to their questions. And then we also look at product videos as your weekly content blogs. What are you putting out to create ongoing relationships and content for your audience? So those are product videos. They are focused on your knowledge, not on your life, which is personality videos. Okay. Then the next video is promotional videos. Especially with women, we don't want to sell. I'm telling you, if people don't know what you do and you don't ask them to work with you, they're going to go take their hard-earned money and go spend it somewhere else. Because if someone has a burning desire or a pain that they need resolved and you have the answer, you need to give them a way to find it, right? So we really help people create these authentic, feel-good ask videos that get their clients working with them. So we call those promotional videos. And then the last video is proof. You need social proof. I mean, written testimonials are awesome, but when you hear, see, feel someone's energy when they're talking about working with you and what that experience is like, it sells it for you. And social proof is huge. We all want to know once we've made that decision to work with someone that we're actually going to get the result that they promise. And so the last type of video is proof. 5 Ps.
I love it.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. So you mentioned this is your It Factor event. I don't know. So and we did touch quickly on what the It Factor is in terms of what sort of, what that means in Hollywood or whatever. But can you talk a little bit about the It Factor, what it is and how you get it?
What is it? It's a magnetic
Movie from the 90s, right?
Yeah, right. It's a magnetic quality that attracts people to you. It is this je ne sais quoi. And you know what? Here's so funny. I have done this training now for years, and I do about 8 or 9 a year. We also have other people facilitate them. And when I ask people what it is never a physical thing. It is never, someone who looks like this or is a size 2 or, has Botox or has extensions or a guy that has 6-pack abs. It's never aesthetic. The it factor is this quality that people have that other people are connected to. And you know what? It's humble, it's funny, it's authentic, it's real, it's driven, it's authoritative, it's all of these things. And we all have this quality. But as I said earlier, most of us have been told our entire life we're too much, or we're too this, or we're too that, or you'll never be this, or you'll never be that. And so this it factor, man, it is burnt out. It is on the dim switch because, as Marianne Williamson says, who am I to be brilliant, right? And so that's what we really help our clients do when they come in and work with us. We're really figuring out what is your it factor? What are your qualities? What are your values? What makes you authentically you? And there are people I work with in their 50s that have never taken the time because we've just been copy pasted, right? Our religion, our families, our education has told us to be a certain way.
It's amazing.
What was that?
I'm just going to say it's amazing how many people just go that route and don't
Oh,
question the fact of why am I here? What am I doing? What's my purpose? They
yeah.
just do the, oh, I got my first job out of high school and stick with it.
Yeah.
That
And
to
that's
me,
most people.
yeah, scary to me.
It's sad to me. I think it's really sad. And so when I work with people on really igniting this it factor, I literally get people, men included, who are just in tears, like, oh my God, I finally know and believe and have the confidence to go out there and do that thing that I've, been dreaming of all this time, and then we actually create the framework so they can actually build it. So it's very cool. It's very fulfilling, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we? I want to. We're starting to run out of time, but I want to have you expand on one more thing because you hit sort of I guess a pain point for a lot of people who are listeners to this show. For me, I mean, it took years to sort of get there, but it's this idea of trading time for money.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that this is a real hot topic right now, especially in entrepreneurial groups who are sort of used to this framework where you just you work X number of dollars for X number of dollars per hour. It's pervasive in sort of traditional work also,
Mhm.
any job
Yeah.
you go to, you're working hourly, that kind of thing. But you mentioned this idea of being leveraged or leveraging your expertise or your knowledge. And some way that that's manifesting is through educational coursework, things like that. But I wondered if maybe you could just talk a little bit more about that transition from sort of, hourly and billing by the hour into actually leveraging your time for or your expertise for money versus your physical hours.
Yes. I love talking about this because I love helping people leverage what it is that they teach or that they do. So, there is the time for dollars, like you said, that's kind of the antiquated way of making money. It's like, hey, I'm going to do this, and you're going to pay me this, and this is the value exchange. But because there's so many people looking for each and every one of our products and services, and you're only one person, how in the world, right? Do you allow other people to experience that? So I'm going to talk more from a service-based perspective, but we also work with product-based businesses. So let's say, for example, you teach people how to start a podcast, right? They can hire you to do that. And that's great. That's a certain high fee because it's super high touch. It's very, valuable and one-on-one. That should be at a very high cost. Okay. Then you're like, hey, I'm going to do a webinar, right? That's another way. And then you can have sales come in from there, workshops, live events, an actual like do it for you here, do it yourself kind of podcast tutorial where they can purchase the course and for $1,000 learn step by step how to create their own podcast. They're not going to get the one-on-one touch that you would provide, but I like helping my clients come up with like a 5-product suite of how they are really teaching what it is that they teach one-to-one. So again, that could be group, it can be live trainings, it can be workshops, it can be big events, small events, masterminds. Like I said, group coaching. There's so many ways now that you can actually take that one thing that you do really well and leverage it in multiple platforms. Did that make sense?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
definitely.
I think that's great. And I mean, it's interesting because I guess in your business as a service business, it seems like you maybe instilled these types of ideas earlier on because I mean, you easily could just be billing by the hour for going out and doing coaching, but presumably you're selling these as packages and things like that.
Yes.
Um, how did you get the idea to make that jump? And maybe it's because of your background in modeling and acting where you were getting a day rate instead of an hourly rate, things like that. Like maybe you
Mhm.
haven't spent that much time working hourly, but I wonder if there was a clear transition for you jumping from one to the other.
Well, I remember when I first moved out to LA, this very like acquaintance I did not know well at all sent me Ali Brown's info. And I was not a coach. I had no plans on getting into personal development or coaching by any means. But I remember I enrolled in one of her programs because the coaching world is very different than owning a brick and mortar like talent agency or interior design where I was trading time for dollars. But once I got my head around what this leveraging meant, it was like, oh my gosh, this is exciting. And so I remember I started off, I was a personal development trainer for a year, traveled the world, and people started asking me, do you coach? And I said, of course I do. And so I started with hourly, and then I started with monthly packages, and then I started with a group coaching program. And then the it factor, the video training came to be, took over everything, and realized, how can I teach this? I have an online program, I have a 2-day, I have intensives, I have coaching programs. So I just got excited because I wanted to serve more people. And here's something really juicy. I know we don't have a lot of time, but there's this this concept called spiral marketing. And this is really what came to be, is that my clients need this result, and after this result, they need this result, and after this result, they need this result. For example, people come to me for on-camera training. Once they get this huge aha and transformation in their life, then they realize, oh my gosh, I'm not leveraged. I don't have systems. I'm not automated. I don't have a brand that I'm proud of.
Sounds familiar.
Right? So we now have all of those things we offer. We don't lead with that. We don't market that. Our client would be confused as hell, right? We market the on-camera piece. And when they come in, then what do you need next? Okay. And then you need this. I am launching a makeup line because that's something my clients need. We're launching products, camera kits, things like that. So I'm constantly listening to my client and they're telling me what they need next. And then I find a way to leverage that and give that to them. So that to me has been how we have scaled. We are not constantly putting out new products and services into the marketplace. People would be very confused, and a confused mind never buys. So we lead with video, and then when they come in, we're like, oh yeah, but we have all this over here for you.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a really nice insight. I haven't heard anybody put it that way before. That's awesome. So cool. Well, unless there's anything else, Keri, where can people find you, learn more about you, get into your programs, find more information about this?
Come on over to inspiredliving.tv, like television. I do video, right? So inspiredliving.tv. We have so many amazing free resources. I have a Be Studio Ready camera guide if you want to learn how to set up your home studio or office. I have so many inspiring videos and content. So head over there and then please connect on social. Where I do my social, I'm engaged there. So Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, wherever social bugs lie.
Perfect.
That's awesome.
We're there.
And we'll put all that stuff in the show notes. So that'll
awesome.
be cool.
Thank you.
Well, Keri, thanks so much for your time. Really glad to have you. Pleasure meeting you, and really fun conversation. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Loved it, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Have a good day.
Thanks to everybody who tuned in on the live stream, and we'll catch you all next week.